What's up? We are back. Fed Up Podcast. I'm Ryan here with Jordan. What's up, dude?
Ryan, let's do it. Fillet our souls again.
Here we go. So today, talk about identity. So, yeah, if you're thinking after talking about sex, why would you talk about identity? Well, it kind of made sense to us, and we hope it'll make sense after we get done talking about it. So the plan of action is we're going to go through, talk about what is identity, and we're going to start with more of what's the ego, how do we kind of lose ourselves in it, what does it take to actually find ourselves and find peace along the way. So hopefully by the end of this episode you will have, I don't know, some interesting questions going on in your brain about where you identify, where your hangups are, what does it mean to try and find your true self. So it's all really important stuff. Huge topic. Once again, we don't really talk about anything else. So, yeah. So to begin with, ego. Jordan, what comes to mind, dude? I want to know. You first. What comes to mind when you think of ego?
Well, I'm gonna be a dick and flip it right back on you because
Go for it.
you put the puzzle together of sequencing sexuality, and I think you bringing up this topic and seeing how much of our identity, especially in Western culture, is tied to sexuality, and the lack of understanding and education about what the hell that even means and what do I do with that thing between my legs, and is that thing between my legs the thing that is truly me, and if it's not the right package, quote unquote,
Yeah.
I can get it surgically corrected to have the right package.
Sure.
So you can, in a weird way, like send an invitation to Santa Claus to come down and give you a different package between your legs. And
This is such a tough topic.
yeah, so I think you were really brilliant in how you saw how much of our identity is tied to sexuality. So I want to hear more of how you kind of bridge that gap with seeing those two as kind of being synonymous.
Okay. So, yeah, because we were talking about sex last week, and we kind of felt like there was something we didn't really talk about that is important when it comes to sex because it is such a huge part of our lives, something we identify with so strongly that, yeah, we do need to talk about it. But before, I want to read this quote from Eckhart Tolle just because I think it kind of ties into the answer to the question. So Eckhart Tolle says in his book Power of Now, New Agey Awesomeness, he says the most common ego identifications have to do with possessions, the work you do, social status and recognition, knowledge and education, physical appearance, special abilities, relationships, personal and family history, belief system, and often also political, nationalistic, racial, religious, and other collective identifications. None of these is you. And he says a little bit longer down the page, he says, as long as the egoic mind is running your life, you cannot truly be at ease. You cannot be at peace or fulfilled except for brief intervals, when you've obtained what you wanted, when your craving has just been fulfilled. So the reason I think it's important to talk about ego or whatever you want to call it, we'll kind of dive into what that means more, but it's basically the social identification we build as we grow, right? This person that we create, and it's all about us creating something to be accepted or whatever it is, right? We're trying to figure this out constantly. We're growing up. We're like, who am I? What is this? Oh, I feel like I enjoy this. This must be me, or whatever it is. You know, you're a great basketball player. That's what you are now. Your identity is your basketball ability and how well you can make shots. Can I get into college? Can I be a pro? Whatever it is, right? So it's this thing we're building. And the question comes back to, so finding your true self, right? So to go back to what we're talking about with sex, right? It goes into this really interesting area because
What I want to add to it,
go ahead,
to just fuel the flame. It's so ironic that yesterday, God bless our president or lack thereof, but mostly not bless him. He did the transgender ban on individuals getting into the military. So there's so much of a person of probably the most immense power in the world saying he's defining because of a sexuality orientation what you can and can't do with your life, and how heartbreaking it is for someone because of their identity and their ego being tied to a specific gender, a specific sexuality, saying, I can't go defend my country.
Yeah.
Like, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. It's just an evolution of racism now in a subcategory of, because of a gender, you cannot do a thing.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
So I just wanted to add that. It's just a very interesting tidbit with this conversation and sexuality and identity and
totally. So I think that hits on the point I was going to make, where it's something where there's a lot of people right now, especially that are gay or trans or whatever in the LGBTQ community, that feel very ostracized for who they are. And it's a terrible thing to have that. I can't imagine to feel like that and feeling like you have to fight to be accepted, because so many people assess you and say there's something wrong with you, right? So in turn, you're like, you want to go and prove and say, hey man, there's nothing wrong with me. This is the way I'm built. Like, it's the same natural feeling that I have that you have. It's just different, right? So the hard part with that is you desperately want people to accept you so that they can understand what it feels like to be you, and all the battles that I can't even imagine that would take, right? Because we're so wired to think like life looks this way, especially coming out of the background we do, right? Where if you had those kind of tendencies, you would have to come out to your parents and say, hey, this is me, this is who I am, right? And hope that they would still accept you. And then plenty of people go, nope, get out.
No, they'd purchase you a one-way ticket to hell.
Right? And it just creates this thing like we were talking about before, where if there's a part of you that you feel like is not generally accepted, you have to fight for it, right? Because you want people to understand and do this and really grasp the fact that, like, this is something that's a part of me that's important, that you need to understand. But there's also another side to it where we get to what Eckhart Tolle's talking about here, is that you don't want to let it be something you become so passionate about proving to people that you become owned by it. And it's a really touchy thing to say, because it may sound intolerant or anything else, but I really don't feel like it is, because it's something that you want to constantly be on the journey of figuring out who you are. We constantly put on these masks, right? And it's easy to let the mask of whatever is marginalizing you that you wear and you have to wear. But I'm just saying that, like, it's not something we want to stop and do. Like, you would hope that we get to a place where people don't really have to come out anymore. That's just not something that you have to do. It's just a part of who you are and where you're going. Like, it's all part of the process, right? But the hard part is like, it makes me think of civil rights, where how horrible it must have been, where you watch what happens to, you know, these people of a different race getting controlled by the bigger race and saying, you can't sit here, you can't do that, and then having to fight for that so hard, where you're like I'm a human too, but you don't want to let it control you. You don't want it to be something where you're stuck in that as well. You want to keep progressing and keep going, where it's like, yeah, it's a part of you to be black or whatever race you are, but it's not all of you. And that's the key point when it comes to the ego, because what ego does is it wants you to stop. It wants you to say, I'm gay, I'm black, you know, I'm a Christian, I'm a whatever, right? And it wants you to stay there. Stay at this place. And the point being is that you're not going to find satisfaction that way. Part of understanding what the ego is and how we build it is learning to see why we put these masks on and how they stay attached. And all I'm saying is part of the process of figuring out your identity is taking off this mask and going, whoa, I didn't even realize this thing was on. When did this get put on? And it's a really crazy process that really takes it takes a lot of journey into your soul. It takes a lot of insight that really, I don't know, to me, when I think of like what's happened in my life trying to figure it takes a lot of courage, but like
stamina.
I would say almost like grace, where like there's things in my life where like they just help me be aware to it that had nothing to do with me. So anyway, when you hear all that, I don't want to rant and rave about it, but what comes to your mind when you think about owning these things that maybe we shouldn't own. And even things like when we're persecuted for something, the fact
Yeah.
that we have to fight for something, and next thing you know, that mask is glued to our face.
Yeah. Well, ego, per usual, I have a very intense opinion about it. Ego to me is a self-imposed prison, and it sounds really like I'm lacking compassion for people, but ego is, in the most simple way, it is a perception of what you think you are and whatever you put into that category. And it stems from, you mentioned race, gender, spiritual, religious affiliation, all the subcategories that if you were to look, and if I was to put you in a biographical book, like if I was to look at anyone and just look at them as a book on a shelf,
Mhm.
like that is everyone's ego. It is a picture book. For me, it's probably a scratch and sniff comic book with no words, but just horrific pictures of different events. But it is things that are not you, and this is really hard to fundamentally understand. But they are the labels that you have received throughout your life experience, and the reason why ego is the most dangerous thing, and it's not even it's not a real thing. It's a perception, and it's an idea. The fact that you have more melanin, the fact that you associate with a specific gender, it's like, yeah, your physical skin suit has whatever it has between your legs, but that's not you. The you is underneath the skin suit, and that's what I think a lot of people struggle with, and they think it's hippie shit. Is there's a consciousness, there's an identity in you that happens to be in this skin suit, and we more or less, like, we are all, if you look at, you are in a skin suit, you can look at, everyone has a consciousness that's inside a vehicle, and there is thousands of different types of vehicles. In the same way, humanity, ego is all the bumper stickers on your vehicle, on your skin suit, that people say, I believe in this thing, so I'm going to put this thing on the back of my car, so I'm going to tell everyone, I'm going to defend my thing that I think I am.
Yeah.
And vehicles are literally, like, metaphorically what we are, because we sit inside of them, and the human that is in your vehicle is your true self. There's a conscious spiritual self floating inside the skin suit that is awake and conscious for X amount of hours a day and is driving around, and you have all these things that you think you are, and it's just hilarious. That's why bumper stickers are ridiculous,
Yeah.
because first of all, no one cares what you think. And the fact that you feel like you have to defend something that a stranger who's driving by, you think they care, and
Yeah.
you're so thoroughly rooted in this false self that you have to defend it to people you don't even know. That's bumper sticker industry is a manifestation of the ego. Not to pull back the mask and debunk what it is, but
Sure.
so for me, I look at ego and I say, this prison I have lived in, growing up, I believing that I had to be this Christian thing. I had to be this athletic thing. I had to be this intelligent, whatever, scholastic thing. Like, I was not a lot of those things, and hated school. And because of that, my ego believed I was stupid. So I've carried that torch, and I still struggle with that all the time. I feel insecure all the time. Like, I was working yesterday, and we're looking at all these blueprints, and it's ridiculous architecture. I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? And I'm sitting around with all these dudes who know how to build all this crazy shit, and I have to sit there, and my ego says, don't let them know you have no idea what you're doing. Continue to pretend. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Looking at this, yeah, absolutely. So what the ego says is, like, you have to, if you don't think you're something, you have to pretend and protect the perception of what you are. So this was so dangerous, is that you said it so well. It's like, it's these masks, it's these identifications that we tell who I am and what my value is based off of the color of my skin, what's in between my pants, whether or not I want to swap out the hardware.
Yeah.
It's all of these things that, unfortunately, our quality of life largely hinges on the environments we put ourselves in.
Yeah.
and the cultural climate we don't get to choose to be in is your gender really fucking matters. Your race really fucking matters. And there's objective perceptions of what those things are. And we spend so much time feeling people's perceptions of what we are. If I am, like you mentioned, if I'm a black man dealing with homosexuality and I'm in this environment of, that's not okay because of my race and because of my sexual desires. It's like, the beautiful thing is like, you didn't choose to have your race. You were born and you happen to have a skin suit that happens to be a certain shade of whatever. And there's a specific amount of melanin. The fact that you think you're less of a person because of the amount of melanin you didn't choose to have is so fucking bananas to me. But I'm not minimizing that. I haven't had to deal with that, so it's easy for me to talk about it. But we're trying to debunk. We're trying to pull back the power that we fuel in this false reality that we're all dancing with. Because ego is this thing that it's like these like shitty tennis balls of shards of glass in them. We're just hitting them around to each other, trying to very intentionally hit the other person with them, you know?
Yeah.
And when you take the ego away and you look at someone and you're like, actually, your value has nothing to do with your race or your gender decisions. Like, I'm not going to hit a shard of glass tennis ball. I'm going to throw a dove at you and you guys are going to snuggle. You know what I mean? Like, that's the potential we have every day to take off the mask of ego and say, you're a fucking human being.
Yeah.
I don't care. I really don't care about where you want to express your sexuality or what gender you have or what race you are. You're a human being. And if I am feeling tension and a lack of desire to want to connect with you, it's because I'm terrified of things I don't understand. And what you embody, the bumper stickers on your car terrify me. And they're telling me that you think there's going to be an apocalypse and whatever. I don't understand all these things, but underneath that, there's a person inside that vehicle that I'm observing, and there's value there intrinsically.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I know what you're saying. It takes it, like the image I had when you're talking is
not a good one.
Well, to go back to like the masks idea is, you ever seen The Mask with Jim Carrey?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, right. So just imagine this green mask showing up on shore, right? And putting it on. And all of a sudden you're like, woo, turn into this freaking crazy ass dude who's got all these powers and stuff like that, right? That's what happens. Next thing you know, we put this mask on. It encapsulates all of us. And what happens is we want that mask that gives us those powers, right? So we try them on and we finally find the one that sticks, turns green. And next thing you know, we can do all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
Right? That's what happens. So that's what happens when you see people that attach to something, especially something where your talents and other stuff come into this gigantic identity, right? Yeah. I keep thinking of like Kobe, because it's like, to me, thinks of like someone who like has all these talents that like culminate together when he puts his basketball mask on to be this basketball god. Yeah. Right? And it's like, why would you ever take that mask off? Everyone's like wanting to see you, wanting to spend time with you, cares about every part of your life. It's like, I want to keep that mask on. I'm making tons of money. My life is pretty badass. Everyone knows who I am. Yeah. You know, I don't have to worry about jack for money and stuff, right? Where I can't imagine taking that green mask off like you see with Jim Carrey and it just fighting you. That's what comes to my mind when it comes to ego a lot of times. Some people don't necessarily have that. They're just putting masks on and they just find one that works. It doesn't really give you superpowers, but it works. You feel accepted, right? But I think it's really hard, because when we're going through life as this journey, right? As assuming it's a journey, when in reality, is it really a journey? Like, is there a destination? Because that's where it goes when you think about identity. Identity is completely wrapped in purpose, right? So to have a ego means that you have this destination you're going for. It's this thing, right? Whether, like we talked about with being gay, you want to be gay and have people accept you, like that's what it is, or you want to be the best basketball player in the world, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? There's so many different masks that we can wear. But the point being is, like, those masks come on because we believe there's a purpose behind it, right? So to go back to the journey thing, is life really a journey? Because you think about it, right? Is there some destination you get to where it's like, oh, this is it. I figured it out. I don't think it is. Yeah. You know, I think Alan Watts talks about it this way. He's like, life isn't a journey. When you think about it, there's no destination you're going to get to that's ever going to bring the satisfaction that comes when you think of what the ego's for, is basically this lie of like, once I have this, I'm going to be complete. So what that means is life is now, life is in the moment, life is a dance. Like when you hear music or you're dancing, right? He has this great way of saying that it's not just about, you don't dance to get to a destination, you dance to dance.
Yeah.
And that's the key part when it comes to identity. And when you think about it, like you realize that you put these masks on to go somewhere, that you think that it's a journey that you're trying to get to, that once you're going to get there, my life is complete. This is me now, right? Or whatever it is. And the reality is, nope, it's not.
Yeah.
Like part of life is understanding that it's now, this is it. This is the moment where you enjoy the music and the dance. And if you don't, then you're constantly going to be putting on these masks, trying to find that superhero mask.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part about it. So when you think about that, dude, when you think about purpose being tied to it, what comes to your mind? Yeah. I mean, it's such a big topic, and hopefully I didn't convolute that too much.
No, I think it's a perfect progression. And not to get back on the bumper sticker car tangent, but I thought of when you were talking about like, there is no specific destination in life. There is a beginning and an end. And if there is a beginning, the inevitability of the end is a fact. Mm-hmm. And we function in a way in life. I was listening to something yesterday. I was working out listening to Carl Jung talk about death.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the life is just as it's not superior. It is an equal powerful teacher as death. And there is these beginning and this end. So in between understanding how to live life, you must understand the inevitability and the fact that there is an off switch at some point. So navigating, like you said, this journey that doesn't have a destination, like that's the realization is we that's the thing that's crippling all of us, is because we do wake up every day. We get into this self-imposed prison of ego, all the bumper stickers we have in our vehicle, and we say, and most of us, we pour fucking diesel fuel into these unleaded engines, and we just floor it. And we are honking, and we are all think we have these, we're trying to get Bugatti engines in our like Toyota Celicas from 83 hatchbacks. You know, it's like, we all think that our value is how fast and how powerfully we're racing through this race that isn't a race. And the turtle is fucking winning. We're all trying to be the rabbit and get through life as fast as we can and create so much noise. But the reality is, like Alan Watts discussed, is like, you're not finding any purpose or meaning in life unless you learn how to dance and just do it because you want to dance.
That's right.
Meaning, unless you are getting in your vehicle and saying this day doesn't need to have a specific destination for me to be like awake and present and being at peace in this day, the goal of each day should be, yes, there is goals within it and I find value in what I'm doing, but unless it's feeling like a joyride in like some 1950s like convertible on the coast, like Southern California, with the people that you've chosen to invite into your vehicle, and just being, absorbing the energy of the sun, being in a state of peace, like you can choose to be in that vehicle. Essentially is what Alan Watts is saying, is like, or you can dance to win, you know what I mean? And it's an incredibly complex thing, because I know everyone has incredibly very real, very legitimate reasons for putting certain bumper stickers on to say fuck you, you know, to so many people because of the color of my paint on my car. I've been said that my car's shitty, and because it's not lifted, and because it's not a lowrider, and all these things, like that's a piece of shit, and because it's not this lifted, and this is the trucks we see every day at work, and like because that's the trucks we see at work are the manifestation of these guys' ego saying, see, motherfucker, I'm gonna pull into the parking lot, I'm gonna reverse at 0.03 miles per hour and blast my music, and you can see I haven't washed my truck intentionally because I want you to see the waterfall of dip spit off the side of my door, and those are like the in war, when you like snipe people, like you accumulate these like battle,
Yeah.
like these numbers, like those streaks coming down is like, I'm a fucking man. It's literally like that's what it is. And a lot of times people's vehicles are manifestations of their ego. Like they're
Yeah.
so tied to it.
Yeah.
The irony being, it's a thing that gets you to where you want to go. That's the purpose of a vehicle.
Yeah.
But it becomes I am winning in life, and that's why every rap video has 73 different specifically rented vehicles to say, see, I'm not that person who's weak. Like I have lots of things.
Yep.
So you need to cut me off because I will forever keep going.
You reminded me of I had a comedy bit about that.
Yeah.
Which is
Please
so
share.
perfect. No, I'm not going to share it.
Come on!
You hit the nail on the head. No, but I want to hit on that, dude, because the scariest part when you think about ego and basically what it is, it's basically, we look at it as it's this medication almost, right? For the terror we have in life of, that life and death thing that you're talking about, right? It's the thing that we put on that gives us purpose. Because the thing about it is, like, purpose is important because when you have a purpose, man, you are driven. You are somebody who is just on a mission, right? And there's a lot of good that comes out of it,
Yeah.
right? But this is the subtle difference that I feel like comes with purpose. Is there things that are purposeful in my life, and what is the grand purpose? Because what I feel like happens is we treat life like a journey because we say that there is the purpose to my life, whatever the purpose is.
Yeah. The finish line, destination.
Whatever it is, right? And that's when that mask comes on, because it's something that, like, now you've locked into that destination or that mindset of like, my life has like this ultimate purpose. And when that happens, it robs you of the dance because you're stuck in like destination mode. I'm going from point A to point B, and once I get to point B, everything's gonna be great.
Yeah.
It's this belief that we have. That's when that mask comes on. So part of when you think about the ego and how it builds itself and how it comes on, it's based on that fear of like what, like, it's basically that fear of nihilism, right?
Yeah.
That their life has no meaning, right? And it's like this borderline dance with it, where it's like, yeah, well, maybe it doesn't, but maybe it does. But like, I don't want to take the possibility of it not having it because that's terrifying to me. I'd want to live for something, right? That's what we love stories about people that are willing to go to these great lengths for their purpose, and do it, where purpose is important. It's not to sabotage it and say you just have to get rid of it. No, purpose is what makes us awesome. It's what makes us step into who we are in this unique way, because we're all built unique, right? And we all have these talents that we should be helping give to the world. That's what we want to encourage, is like the dude who's working at the post office, like Jameson and I talk about, like Bukowski, right? Who was this freaking badass writer, but he didn't find out till he was 55. Yeah. Well, he knew because he'd write in the morning and stuff, but like that's what he kept doing, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden he was able to go out on a limb and fulfill his purpose in life. Yeah. And the purpose in the sense of like, this is my talents. This is something I can give to the world that maybe no one else can, right?
Bukowski's he was his dance. He finally learned how to dance when he was 55. And
yeah,
that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah, totally. And like, so the difference, what I feel like the message that we want to say is that not that like you just throw out all the purpose of your life. Purpose is important. It's just you don't make it the pinnacle, because when it becomes the pinnacle, and whenever you fill that slot with my life is about blank, then that's where you're bound to it now. And that's what we don't see. It's like we're living for it, but it turns, and then all of a sudden we're a slave to it. Yeah. And that's, I feel like, a really unhealthy way to live, where you want to live with almost this purpose slot of being like, it sounds really uncertain and a weak answer, but it's like, I really don't know what the grand purpose of it is. But I'm going to continually test it and find out. Yeah. It's not like you're going to nihilism and just saying like, there's no meaning to life. Screw this. I should just ka-chunk. Yeah. Like you think of what like Albert Camus talks about, right? With like basically life's meaningless and blah, 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 where it's not. It's there's stuff that teaches you that does, like there is a purpose, but it's almost like this, you have to accept this mystery. Not to keep going on and on and on.
No.
But it's just
so important what you're saying.
It's something that I don't want the impression to be is like you just have to get rid of your purpose in life. Everybody needs to step into their purpose in life, but just don't make it something where it's like this concrete, my life's about this, this is who I am, I'm owning this thing. Treat it as like I have these talents, I have this unique part of me that I can give to the world in this unique way. But it's not something where I have to identify with so hard that it's me now. Because the when you look at you, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is it goes back to this mystery of who you are and what's behind when you think of the vehicle analogy that you just used, like the person driving, like what's going on, because it is this grand mystery that we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, well, I want to say something about the nihilism is, and I have a very, very passionate opinion of this, because we grew up in such a non-nihilistic culture of there is absolutely a God. Guess what? We know who he is.
Yeah.
More importantly, we know who his son is, and you're welcome, and you have to do all these things. And if you maintain the relationship, you're going to go to heaven. And if you don't, you're going to go to hell. So it was this ultimate purpose we had of like, it's so clear what we had to do. We had to go save people from the hell that they would go to if they didn't know what we knew. We have to help them win because there's a burning place without it. It's a terrifying thing to program your mind with.
Yeah.
So, but the antithesis of that is nihilism, where there's like, there is no God, there's no meaning. And my perception at this point, with having very vast contrasting experiences and perceptions and studying, is life has the exact amount fucking meaning and purpose as you want it to have. We have free will. You get to choose to look at life as having zero purpose, and you will have a purposeless life. And your identity will be nothingness. And you will be in a state of misery because there is no purpose within your identity. Okay? Or you could channel it in a way like the other end of the toxic spectrum, which is finding a very concrete, I'm in a prison of a specific spiritual path, and I'm never going to think about anything else or explore anything else, and I'm going to judge everyone who's not within that same place. But then there's a place called being free, where you take complete fucking ownership of your life and you say, life is really hard. And there is a lot of truth within that Buddhism, like life is suffering. Like there's a lot of suffering. But the misunderstanding of what suffering is, it is the necessary feelings associated with finding beautiful moments and creating things and cultivating things. You look at nature and how it suffers, and how what we're doing to it and how it's suffering now. Mm-hmm. You look at the necessary seasons of what mother or father, however you want to maternally look at nature, like this poor lady is exhausted. She has to go through the winter, and she's cold as fuck. And she has to have that to preserve things and for the soil to get ready for the spring to come. Mm-hmm. And then she is sweaty and wet, and not sexually, but just dripping, because she knows she needs to nurture the soils for the pollination and all the seeds to plant. For then she's like, this is dope. You're welcome, world. Here's summer. You're welcome.
Yeah.
And then it turns into fall. And then there's this level of like physical, tangible sadness. So you look at nature and how our world, like there's the necessary suffering and the cycles of life that mother, father, whatever nature is doing. So it's like so being a creature within nature, like we're not exempt from that process. Like our evolution is, we have the spring, we have all had seasons of depression and anxiety, but you and I both know pressing into those things, gutting the weeds that were inside of ourselves, and realizing, and this is the ownership part, is we finally realized that we can cultivate and get out all that shit that was crippling us. We can be the nature dictator. You and I can forecast what the weather patterns of our emotional state are going to be, because you and I are farming our souls. We're weeding out the toxicity, planting seeds of truth, and you and I are both, junior farmers out on the field trying to figure out how the hell to get better crops. And we know that what I'm doing today and how I'm cultivating my heart, the disciplines that I have, I know in a few months my life's going to be better. Because I'm fucking focused on the farm and the land every day. And I take complete ownership of it. So, but the suffering aspect is brutal.
Yeah.
because to be in our culture and to yield things and moments that matter and to create character and integrity and an identity that has meaning to it is lonely as fuck. Because everyone is like, why in the hell would I farm and be patient with things when I can have things now? I want things now. Why would I cultivate and work through, like you talked about in the marriage thing, like you've said, expressed, the marriage isn't perfect, but I know off camera, like you love and respect your wife infinitely, and you feel incredibly blessed to have this woman be a partner with you in life. But the amount of farming that has had to happen to make that to a place of mutual respect and respecting and loving each other's differences, like that suffering aspect of realizing in the marriage there's different ego things that you're both protecting and letting go of.
Yeah.
So it's a really fucking odd way of describing what nihilism is and the suffering within it. But then there's the other end of the spectrum. And so when you let go of everything and you let go of the identity bumper stickers and you start just trying to fine tune your transmission,
Yeah.
and just sail and just be, and like you talked about, is the goal has to be, there isn't a goal except to find out who you are and learn how to dance.
Sure.
And if you're a break dancer, if you want to fucking tap dance, if you want to do some of that like crazy ass Irish whatever the fuck, you know,
Yeah.
then find it and be it. You know,
Totally.
that's what you got to figure out. It's what's under the hood. Don't try to get a Bugatti engine if you're a Celica. Like Celicas are dope, you know.
Totally.
So, not to get off on the crazy nihilism tangent, but what do you think? What do you think for you has been and is currently, not to put you on the spot, like what bumper sticker have you had the hardest time getting off of your vehicle? Like what ego things that you still to this very moment are struggling to let go of daily? What are the things that you're still attached to that you've been told, like what your father has told? And that's the thing, like our maternal figures in our lives largely cultivate our perceptions of what our ego is. Like, so the influences in your life, like what are things that you have to still tell yourself in the mirror, like, I am not this thing. This is not who I am. Yeah. So with your ego, where you're at right now.
Oh, that's a tough question, dude. Puts me on the spot for now. I thought you were going to talk about like in the entirety of my life. Then I could be like, oh man, there's a couple that.
That's too easy.
Yeah.
That's too easy.
Right now, yeah. Yeah, it's hard because.
And I think I think that's the important transition I'm trying to make, because we can talk about all this stuff in past and blah, blah, blah. And I think anyone who's listens to us relatively frequently knows who we are and what we struggle with. You know. But I think what the important thing I'm trying to express is the ego will forever be just itching at your mind through influences around you daily. You're constantly bombarded with what you are and what you're not all the time. And we're pressured to look specific ways because we're told value is in this. We're told to like be a champion for gender issues, and if you have or haven't had them, and if you're not, you're homophobic or whatever. So what are the things right now that are still trying to put you in that prison?
Sure. Yeah. But that's the thing about life, dude, is there's constant things that want to put you in the prison. I think of being a dad, just like you're a dad.
Yeah.
You want to be a good dad. You want your kids to love and accept you.
Yeah.
You want everyone around you to see that you're a good dad, you know, or you think about being a husband and wanting my wife to appreciate me as a husband and value me and be grateful for me and all these things, right? But when you think it's so many of these identities that we have in our lives, right? When you think of like what you talked about with the blueprints, right? Where you're at work and you want people to be like, oh man, Jordan Sharp, he's got this shit. I'll give him some drawings. He's got it, right? And
he likes the color.
Like, your mind, you're like, I'm not getting this yet. This is kind of scary, right? Where there's so many of those identities that creep in. So for me, it's the most prevalent ones right now, where I think of being an iron worker and having to do what you're talking about. Look at blueprints and make sure I don't screw this up. I got to build a building or, you know, whatever, right? And there's so much that comes with that, where it's a constant battle of like, okay, I see all these hats that I wear, right? And so many times I want to just keep that hat on, right? Oh, I'm smart iron worker. You think I'm smart? Oh, great, right? Or it's like when you asked me that freaking ridiculous question the other day. right? And then I got good compliments
you
because people are like,
unknowingly-
"Oh, you had such
yeah.
a great answer." It's like,
Because
yeah,
it was so annoying.
no, but it was
backfired.
honest, but it was something where like I don't want these hats to define me because some of them are great and like I want to wear the hat. Where
And you
like
have to
people are
defend
like,
them.
well, I gave a good answer. What if I gave a bad answer, right?
Yeah.
Well, and whoever judged it, like, why do I care? Like, there's all these things that I want to wear. So for me, yeah, it's still that acceptance piece. I want other people to love and accept me so hard,
Yeah.
right? The people in my life, and it goes back to that because that was my biggest thing as a kid that I had to get over was this feeling of like not feeling valued, and in the way that I was looking for it, even though like everyone around me was giving it to me in the best of their ability. In my mind, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So it just let me feel like I wasn't valued and appreciated, right? And it's something that I had like this woundedness, this inner like that I've built around, right?
Yeah.
This idea of like I'm not worthy enough, I'm not enough. And when I look at my biggest struggle with that mindset, that ego that wants to take place, it's like, look at you now, bro. You know, it's that idea of like, you know, we're like,
You're welcome,
look,
world.
you're so smart, you got it together. It's
Obviously.
all these things. Well,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? And it's like, no, I don't, man. I don't. You just don't understand it. There's plenty of times where you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, and then I think of what I would have said. And be like, man, that would have been a really stupid thing to say. Like
I
you didn't
doubt
say that, right?
Yeah.
Where it's those minds. So for me, yeah, it's constant going back to my desire having like to want to be loved, to want to be seen in a certain way, and that desire is something that causes me to put those masks on.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's like that Buddhist principle of trying to get to that desireless place where you realize what's at the end of desire. You've looked, you've seen enough to know that like that desire train gets you nowhere.
Yeah.
If it's something you're trying to answer that pinnacle question we talked about. So, yeah, my biggest struggle is to constantly look at when that desire light goes on, and I'm like, okay, this is going to get me in trouble. And there's plenty of things in my life where I just explained where, yeah, it's me wanting to own that and to have it define me. Good, you know, the good stuff. I don't want the bad stuff, but I want the good stuff. You know, and it's a battle of constantly realizing that it's not the answer.
Yeah.
You know, and letting go of it because it's so easy to get into a spot where people can think this or that of you, and you're like, I just want to stay there now. You know,
Yeah.
we created a podcast. We talk about stuff that has influenced some people, and we've had great conversations and
Yeah.
stuff, right? Where now that person may be like, oh man, Jordan's got it together, dude. I need to talk to him.
Fuck no, I don't.
Let's go have coffee because I want to pick his brain so I could get his idea of like what's
Of
going
what
on.
not to do.
Right. But you could realize how easy it is for you to just be like, man, I dig this. This is sweet, right? And no,
Terrifying. to me.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's my thing. Is I constantly have to go back and constantly surrender all these different things. Like realize this mask is not the answer. Realize this mask is not the answer because my my habit is like, ooh, this is sweet, right? Where's my Jim Carrey mask?
Yeah.
And it's just realizing, nope, that's not gonna help me.
Yeah.
So.
And I think another aspect of ego, the dark side of ego, because it's easy. We associate ego with egotistical displays of personalities and culture, and we look at it as this negative thing of a misuse of infinite power. Like this person's just so powerful and they know it. Like that's what ego is. And there's a really, really sad dark side to ego because it fundamentally, like we just said, it's like it's this thing that you think you are and you've been told you are. And I think the ego can be a thing that you suffer with because a bumper sticker someone gave to you says some really sad shit.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to someone very recently, and a person who went through some pretty sad, fucked up. This person was assaulted, and this person has struggled with that infinitely their whole life, and is now married and has kids, and discussed the complexities of trusting another individual because of the form of assault this person went through, and what was robbed of them in that moment and the shame associated with it. And that's the thing, that when assault happens, when an individual is raped or an individual grows up in an abusive situation, there the biggest lie of what the ego can do is it can say, you this experience happened to you because a part of you deserved it. And we label ourselves as, from that moment, the thing that was taken from us, that person that misused their power to just use us, we carry this level of, I was a victim of that because I was partially deserving of that. And what I said to this person, and I would say and encourage everyone, is like, it's so thoroughly not who you are. And it is a really disgusting act someone had to display and misuse their power to use you and make you feel less than. Because guess what? Any abuser is abusing because they feel like they're fucking nothing and they need to misuse their power. It's like Michael Vick with the hurting animals thing. It's like, so there's a non-glamorous side to ego, that it's the labeling of what I am moving forward, and the power that can come over, that you can have to access and look in the mirror and be like, I have not known where to put this event that happened to me, and I've forever been, and that's the danger of like becoming a champion for like any specific like victims group, is you can't disassociate from that event that happened to you. So you have to, because it's so who you are. And it's so dangerous because it's not who you are. You can be free. You can be free. You can let that go. And that's the forgiveness aspect of being labeled as a thing, thinking you're this thing, and realizing that the only reason this thing is continuing is because you're still holding on to it and still accepting that you are something that you were not in the first place. But there was a very powerful event that said you are this thing. And people don't know where to put that. And what I would say is, it's not supposed to be put anywhere because you can't take that moment away. You can't erase it. It's how do you be with it? How do you figure out how to dance when you feel like you're crippled and you can't fully get up? And it's people, the danger side of ego is specific events that are so dark and so hard in people's lives, is there's nothing you can do to erase it. And that's the scary thing about like therapy and psychology and self-help, is so many people are trying to run away from things that they think they are because of abuse, and the ego tells them, I am this thing that was weak and I don't know how to overcome that. You're never gonna not have that moment in your life. You're never gonna have that abuse situation. It fucking happened. How do you let go of it? How do you do the necessary forgiveness on a daily basis to say, I am not that powerless person in that position? I was a victim of a thing. I've learned how to evolve from it. And what I would argue is, there's so much, being a person of having a father make me feel like a piece of shit and worthless and hating myself infinitely to the point of death. Like, I understand this. I'm not saying like, oh, those poor people who got abused. Like, I fucking get it to death. And the only reason I have peace now is because I stopped running away from the hurt. I found out how to be with it and say, the guy was a piece of shit and he didn't know how to love himself, which means he didn't know how to love me. And that's okay. And I have peace because I look at all that shit that I went through, and what I encourage people who went through shit and were a victim of something to say, you largely are who you are because of that ego label of darkness that has been overshadowing you. But there's so much beauty to be drawn from that soil. If you choose to plant new seeds of erasing that ego, planting seeds of truth of who you could choose to become, and dancing from that place of freedom.
I think, oh man, that was really well said, man. I think it's important to address that dark side of what comes of it. Oh man, just being trapped in that place where that mask isn't that superhero mask. It's that freaking sucking the life out of you mask. Oh yeah, that is something that I feel like we all have to go through. We all have those masks, and trying to discern when they're on, and how to take them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's, I think we've done a dance with this, the spectrum of what ego is, like the false idea of what it could be, this beautiful thing in this race. How do I win this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people losing in life because of the negative ego perception of what they think they are. So I think there has to be a, how do I dance?
Yeah.
How do I find peace?
That's right.
You know, and how do I cultivate the thing that, like that gentleman who didn't know he was an amazing rider until he was 55 and he started dancing, you know. And I think what you and I are doing now is a big part of us being in our early 30s and figuring out this is who we are as men and human beings, and our egos aren't attached to this, and we're exploring what it means to be fucking human.
That's right.
So it's an ego-less exploration you and I are on.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is look at the claymation videos we've made and the art and the ridiculousness that the freedom we are dancing as doing things that culturally and stereotypically we're not supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's because we're dancing and we're free.
That's right. So I want to hit on that with did you read all of Experiments in Truth by Ram Dass?
I haven't finished it
yet.
yet.
Anyway,
Yeah.
well, here's a segment from it. I don't know if you've read it.
Please,
yet or
please.
not, but so in the book, Experiments in Truth, Ram Dass is going on and kind of talking about how he's learned to see life and learned to kind of understand who he is and that whole process. And I just thought it was a really cool image that kind of talks about. So we've talked a lot about what ego is, but so what does it look like when you can be free of it, right? And so he gives kind of a glimpse of what it looks like. So he says that imagine you're walking in life and you have this dial right next to your temple and you're able to change the channel. Okay, so just that mental image that you can flip the switch, right? Most of us don't know that it's there. And then once we figure out, oh, this is here, I could tweak it. That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
How you tweak it, how you understand why you want to tweak it, and that. So basically, he goes through and he talks about the channels once you tweak it. So he says, channel number 1. So basically, you see a man and a woman. You see someone who's fat and thin. You see someone who is handsome and ugly. That matrix of differences on a physical plane. So like we talked about with sex, you're just kind of like with porn, it locks you into that physical plane. You're stuck on channel 1, right? And you could also flip it to channel 2. So channel 2 is psychology. You could see like, oh, there's a manic depressive in front of me. You could say there's a happy person. There's people in psychotherapy live on this channel. People who obsessed with fears and desires, and they physically carry all that stuff. So that's kind of what channel 2 looks like. Then you can flip the switch and go to channel 3. You could say you're a Libra, you're a Sagittarius. You know, you could see yourself as 12 beings of the universe. And I don't remember what he said at the end of that, right? So that's more of a deeper kind of spiritual idea, this astrology or whatever, right? Yep. But you can also flip it to another level. It says channel 4. You look into another person's eyes. You see another being looking at you inside all 3 matrices. You see a soul just like you. All the individual differences. You see the stuff which the other being is encased. You see the person inside, right? You could also go to the next channel, which is channel 5. What you see yourself looking at yourself. One awareness, which is in a multiplicity of form, right? But then he also talks about another channel, channel 6. And he says, you disappear and I disappear, and the dial disappears. And you deal with what the Buddhists call the void, or what the New Testament talks about before the word, or why God is not able to be spelled. And it just seems really inconceivable to us.
Yeah.
But the reason to bring those things up is it makes you think about that question of who am I? What identity is all about is answering that question. We all answer it various ways as we grow, and we constantly change it. Some people stay locked into one for a long time, especially when it comes to faith. When you think of faith, faith is probably the biggest one where you keep that sucker locked in. That answer is like, you box it and you keep it, right? So when you're thinking about that question of who am I and answering it, and you think about like what Ram Dass is talking about here, it helps peel the veil of how separated we are, and it goes back to kind of what we talked about with love. It's seeing how connected we are, and beyond all this facade is this interconnected oneness state, right? Where it sounds so use the word hippie when it comes to this stuff, but it's something that I don't know. It's weird when you think about it. I don't know if you've had many experiences with it. I haven't, but I know that there's been times where I could sit and meditate and watch my thoughts float away, and I sit there and I think about the person thinking the thoughts, and you're able to get a glimpse of like what's beyond that, and that's something where you realize a little bit more of what he's talking about. And that's why sometimes the people that have had the psychedelic trips, or the mystical experiences, or the out of body near death stuff, where they can talk about this place of just connectedness, where you finally realize that, like, yeah, you're in this form, this meat suit, like you talk about, that how much of an illusion it truly is. And the thing that's interesting is when you get to this place of answering who am I, and you free yourself from like this journey mindset, and you're just present in the moment. That's the most beautiful way, I think, of thinking about it, is just like when God answers Moses in Exodus, and he just says, I am, right? When you think about like just
Dot
that
dot
answer,
dot.
yeah, I am, right? And I think even Eckhart Tolle talked about that when he got to this enlightenment place. He just realized he was the I am. When you think about what that means, like, I am here, I am this, I am talking to you right
Yeah.
now, right? And what that does, it's just like this unlocking concept, this unlocking idea that frees you from this illusion. And so I'm sorry, that was a lot of hippie
No,
stuff,
no, no,
but
no.
I do
It's
I
made
I do
perfect
want to
sense.
hear your thoughts on it when you think about that. So when you think about thinking about answering that question, who am I? And then you just focus on the end of that, I am. What does that do for you?
Oh, man, gosh dang it. Well, it used to put me in a place of like crippling fear because I've always been very in tune with kind of my conscious self, and I was always very aware of the synthetic lies that I was fueling and like needing to be certain things for certain people. I've always been very emotionally connected to whether or not my compass is going towards something pure and true, and talking about that frequency of being on a specific dial and looking at people and your experiences from a very young age. I've been very aware of the channels that I'm on, and I've been fortunately and unfortunately aware that most of the channels are fucked. And um, because I'm so I know I'm not supposed to say this as a human being, man from Texas, working a blue collar job, but I'm so in touch with my feelings and have been my whole life, which is not allowed to be said. Um, and it's been a very like crippling thing because knowing that I am a spiritual being within the skin suit, all of the experiences I've had being so void of that I am state of being, of just that like they talk about in scripture about like God's name being just like breath,
Mm-hmm.
like they talk about Yahweh and like how it's just this like it just is, like it's just this energy, this matrix of whatever's holding everything together, whatever's plugging in our minds right now. Like that's what's so fascinating about photosynthesis, like the energy radiating from the sun and the green shit absorbing it,
Yeah.
almost in this like rejoicing state of like thank you, like there by the plants and grass photosynthesis, it dancing and being what it is as a byproduct, it creates oxygen for us to breathe, and then we get to use it or misuse it accordingly, and everything's just kind of going.
Mm.
Everything's just, whether we like it or not, we're going to wake up. We can choose to turn off that switch prematurely, but at this point in my life, it actually brings me a ridiculous amount of peace because I've realized that I am that I am.
Mm.
I know I don't know so much. That level of letting go, of needing to be something at the end of I am, is that's the problem with everyone in our culture and worldwide. That's what's suffocating us, is I am this, because we all have a laundry list of answers. I am this. I am a husband. I am a father. I am a blue collar worker. I am an artist. I'm all these things. And we attach things to the I am. And if your I am is not a ... then you're fucked. And you know it. And that's the hard part. As I say that compassionately, because I've experienced this, is the more I say I am and I've filled in that blank and I think I am that thing, it's because I'm attached to needing to be something for someone else, because I need to uphold this synthetic false self to be perceived as this thing, because I'm starving for love. And I think what finally clicked for me is, and I talked about that story with that girl and the suicide, is I was finally in like a very supernatural, for me, it was a very supernatural experience, because I chose to be love. And my whole point of this hippie tangent is to say, when I say I am, and I just choose to be love wherever I'm at, life makes sense. And the power that you can draw from just I am, what I say when I am love, that means I have found what it means for me to dance in life. I have found intrinsically what just ignites me. I have found out what, when the sun gives the plants the oxygen, photosynthesis, I have found out how to really use that shit well and bring fulfillment out of that. And I am alive today, and I am going to be present for it. And I want to just emotionally cruise down the coast in Southern California. And how do I do that? I be very fucking present in each moment and awake, like super duper awake, and not focusing who I was yesterday or who I could be tomorrow. Because when you have peace in life, it is completely contingent on saying, I am ... You are a skin suit harnessed, soul conscious being sailing through life. And if you can just let the wind and the breeze get underneath your sail and just flow, just be present and do the fucking best you can within the moment that you're given, you will be ... You will be at peace, you know?
Yeah. I like that idea, being in peace in the moment when you think about the I am, because, it just forces you into that truth, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like, this is all we got right now. I am here. I am talking to you.
Yeah.
I am. And when you think of identifying yourself with, when you say like, I am love, and you think of what that means, because that word is so big that it's so easy just to say that, and I don't feel like connect with what's really being said when you say I am love, and you say that you are this thing that is what, this connected state, this emotion, this pinnacle of our emotions. Like it's so big, and we did talk about it a little bit when we talked about love. It is connecting with this conscious state, I guess. And I really try not to make it sound all hippie and crap, because it feels like it turns off when you do start talking about stuff like this in this way. But when you think about, what love is in this connected state, and this pure energy, or whatever you want to call it, it is something that, I don't know, it's so freeing when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, what else can you be, or what else are you seeking to be? It's like when you look at the universe and the way it is, it's like everything is so connected and dependent and working together. It's just like this testament of saying, like, everything is all connected. It's all this ball of energy, like I think it was, I don't know, Einstein super misquoted, but you think about basically when he's talking about like everything's this energy, just at different patterns, right? And like we just tend to identify with whatever pattern, and we've talked about it before, where it makes you think that it's not there, because you're so focused on me and what I can do in this little form that I'm in right now, or whatever it is. But it's freeing to know that, like, underneath it all, underneath everything else, it's the same stuff. and it just goes back to it. And it's like, the more you look at with science and stuff like that, the more it just makes me in awe of the grand mystery of it all.
Yeah.
We had that black hole picture that
So
came
dope.
out. It was awesome, right?
So dope.
Where you're looking at it and you're like, man, this is like that.
It's
No matter what answers we
nothing.
get, it just leads to more and more questions, and it's just so fascinating. It's like you get to be a part of this thing where it's like, yeah, it's not made to have an answer, man. It's made to be this grand mystery. And the more you accept the mystery, the more it's like you're free to like see the truths in life. Or it's something that's it's so weird. It's this constant, like, I was writing about it the other day. It's like this Jesus beatitudeness, right? Of just like the meek inheritance. It's like this opposite approach of like when you answer the question of like, what's the meaning of life with I don't know, all of a sudden it flips and it feels like you're just tapping out. But then you start to see the meaning and stuff and what matters. And it's such a weird deal.
Yeah.
But I don't know. When I think about you talking about love and stuff like that, I think it's right on. It's just a very hard thing to talk about because you sound like a freaking psychopath.
I know.
And like just like hippie bullshit. But the thing about it is, it's like, no, the more you dive into it, I think you understand it. But it really does take you going on the journey and staying on it and asking these questions like we're talking about.
Well, I think it is the most brutally open-ended statement to say, like, life's meaning is love. And you and I have discussed this thoroughly. And the most simple kindergarten-y way I can express it in my experience is it is the choosing to not have yourself benefit from an exchange, because you're talking about life on the spectrum of energy and Einstein and all these things and relativity. It's everyone hopefully has had a moment in their life they can relate to on the most baseline level where they saw a need in another human being, and to make a conscious decision to go seek to help, extend, give a hug, have an energy exchange of just an embrace, no articulated love, or to say something of encouragement when you see someone who is down, and you say, you're down because you see yourself as that ego of being less than whatever the fuck they're feeling sad about. And you say, I don't see that. I see you for who you are, and I see beauty. That healing moment, that energy exchange, and you and I have kids, and we know these little itty bitty moments, these micro moments of love, of seeing their struggle and just not having an agenda, but just to be a source of strong empathy and compassion to our child. And you see what that energy does to that individual. You've seen it in workplace, I'm sure, with conversations with grown-ass men, that choosing to go connect with and give of self. It's that inverted psychology of like, how is life not about, it's about getting and taking and conquering and hoarding. But the irony is love, when you choose to say, I am love, it's saying, I'm choosing to not have an agenda except to be a source of energy to give to you to help reignite something of substance and value. It's giving life. It's not being a weed in that garden. You know what I mean? So like, it's actually so insanely simple, but it's so brutally tainted and complex because it's been reworked and, categorized in so many different things. And all the forms of our ego have a version of what love is and isn't. But when you break away and you detach from all of the ego, and you and I were taught everything about Jesus and God being love and blah, 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 growing up. But it's like, I think Jesus, for all intents and purposes, like, believe in giving of himself to death. And I think that's why he was such a radical figure. And that's why he had to be killed by those people. Because they were like, this dude is just giving of himself. He's just giving people food and making wine, and they're just connecting and loving. And that's not okay, because power comes from oppressing people, not giving. So love, to be in a state of who you are, fully knowing who you are and giving of yourself, expressing who you are. That's what it means to be whole.
Yeah. I like that idea, but it's the upper channelness of what we read from Ram Dass. It's realizing that, like, I'm sitting here with you, but in you, I see me. And that's, to me, what love is, where you are able to see into that, where you say, no, man, I'm not, like, I see you both as the separate person in front of me, but I also see me and you.
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of how it comes full circle, where you understand what love is, and you think about, how you can show compassion and love to anybody because you learn to see yourself in them, and it's just they're caught in different egotistical states. I feel like this conversation has been really, really off the wall and Buddhist, and it's all really great stuff. But I just, it's hard because when you talk about stuff like this, and you talk about it in the way we're talking about, it sounds like nonsense to a normal person, and hopefully, like,
because a normal person is thoroughly
caught in the
labeled as these different things.
Yeah, exactly. But like, hopefully, like, it resonates with the fact that, like, you realize what we're talking about at the beginning when we talked about with ego, then you kind of jump onto that and figure out what that means, and it's this progression. We're talking about channel 6, when a lot of people are really stuck on like channel 1 or 0. Right?
Zero desire to get out of the matrix.
And then, like, and that's the crazy part. It's like, to even talk about channel 6 is something that, like, I don't even know if I've really experienced it, you know? It's something that is really interesting and fascinating, and there's something that just rings the bell inside my soul of, like, keep going, dude. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's what I'm what excites me and what ignites me to continue doing this podcast or other ventures is I'm excited about the fact that this thing's never going to end in this dimension of life. And the more I evolve, the more I realize I have more to grow. And the more I quote unquote mature, or lack thereof, in my understandings of things, it just makes me realize how little I know. And that excites me. It excites me to be dumber than who I was yesterday, because it opens me to, there is no finish line. And I think channel 6 is a complete childlike excitement for the unknown, and the acceptance that there is nothing to be known that we have the capacity to know in this life. We don't have it here. There's probably a channel 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever, up into the teens and the hundreds, in some other dimension that is probably holding all this universe in suspension that we don't have the capacity to. So our only responsibility in this life is to say, I am ... and be open. And hopefully find out who you are and be a selfless extension of who you are, cultivating that and giving it. Because that's where life's meaning is found, is how do I give? But it has to start with a place of wholeness.
Dude, that was perfect. I got nothing else to say to that. I mean, that's the ending for me. That was great.
All right, toodles. No.
That was perfect. No, I mean, it's part of why it's so cool to get to talk about this kind of stuff. Just sit here in an environment. Hopefully it encourages other people to figure out a way to do the same in their life, because it is really meaningful. So, I got nothing after that. I feel like you just took it and was just like, perfect ending for me. So,
well, I won't fuck it up.
Thank you.
Well, I'll say one more thing is, and Ryan's has posted stuff about, we're hoping to create a brand and a thing that is not an ego. It's not a bumper sticker, even though there's images associated with it. We're not trying to be hypocritical, but what we're trying to do is connect with an idea of giving who we are without a reason other than to give. And we've been collaborating about different concepts, and been working on some t-shirts and some graphic stuff. And there's going to be, we're just going to start giving away merchandise, and just to give it. And I've got some t-shirts made, and we're going to look forward to, literally we'll find out how, but whoever's made comments or whatever, just going to start sending them to people for no reason other than to be like, hey, super dope to be human. We're glad you're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure it out. Love you.
I think it's great. So that stuff will be coming. I mean, is there anything else you want to share before we wrap this sucker up?
No, stop before it gets bad.
All right. So that's it. Hopefully you guys got something out of our identity talk. And I know I did. Thanks again, dude.
Yeah.